All right, welcome all. My name is Robert Miller. I'm the lead learner for BrainPOP. I do professional development and webinars. We are here having our weekly webinar on making science pop, specifically for middle and high school students. I'm joined today by our Certified BrainPOP Educator, Amanda Pierman. She teaches high school chemistry, I guess many different subjects down in Palm Beach Gardens in Florida. I'm also joined today with Edward Wang and Sarah Keating, game developers from the gaming company Playmata, and we're going to be featuring one of their high school, middle school games called Collisions, a chemistry game today. So welcome all, and yeah, we'll get right into the meat of our webinar here. So through with introductions, we're just going to kind of talk about games in school, focusing on middle school and high school. Being that you are maybe departmentalized or have class periods, time is precious, so why use games? I'm going to share a little bit of my best practices and implementation of games through my classroom experience, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ed to talk a little bit about SnapThought. It's a reflective tool that we have on BrainPOPs, and we'll just kind of talk about that in the context of a chemistry game called Collisions. And then Amanda has actually played this game within her classroom as well as other games. So she will be sharing some experience, tips, and tricks, and trials and tribulations that she's had with games in the classroom. I'll wrap up with a little bit about BrainPOP's Game Up, where you can find loads of games, different levels, different subject areas, all free on BrainPOP. We'll take your questions and answers, and yeah, we'll have a nice 45 minutes of sharing here. So let's just start off with maybe a little bit about why games in middle school and high school. As I'm sharing, and Amanda's going to share in a moment, we will, if you want to give a little blurb of your own in the chat window, if you use games in your classroom, why you use games, maybe why you don't use games, or any other experience that you have or wants or needs with games in the middle school and high school setting, feel free to share that within the chat window. I found I was never really one for games in my fifth grade classroom. I grew up in the era of the Oregon Trail and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. It's working a game into your instruction. One, are you really sure it's a quality game? And then maybe you find one at home at 10 o'clock at night, you get to school and the filters are blocking it. Or maybe you find a great game, but then how do you justify, a game in your class using game time in your classroom? If your administrator is walking through, it's like, oh, what are they doing? Oh, we're playing a game to review a math concept that we had. How do you gather evidence of learning or applying what they did? So there was for me, a lot of hesitation to include games, being that it's precious time. So Amanda, maybe you have some insight. I know you use games in your classroom. If you want to kind of share a little bit about your justification, any experiences you've had with gameplay, integrating that within your instruction.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. I too was of the original mindset that games in class really, what is that? Until I actually tried it. I think that was one of the big misnomers I had, was the idea that, well, games are for outside of school and to let off steam. But in reality, games in the classroom can actually really spark engagement with the students. It can allow them to reinforce concepts. It can highlight areas in which some students are stronger than others, and then we can then use that information to help pair up to other students that may be struggling, and then we can allow for co-teaching. It allows the kids to become very competitive, and competition seems to really spur their gusto with wanting to learn. And the big thing is that they don't realize that they're learning so much whilst they are playing these games. The other thing that I'd like to piggyback on was that, yes, it's very difficult in the past trying to find a quality game, but what's really awesome is that I can just click on BrainPOP and they've already been vetted for me, and I know that they are going to be quality, and then I know that there's going to be extra supplies, resources available for me, so that I don't really have to reinvent the wheel. So if for some reason I need to pull a resource quickly, I know that BrainPOP is going to have my back, and I can do it no matter which subject area I'm going for, which is really fantastic. So yes, I went from the very anti-game in classroom to the bring it on, let's do more games. The more the merrier, the better they are enjoying themselves, the more they're going to remember it. And it's proven itself time and time again, and I've really enjoyed them.
Yeah, and I think the attendees are going to really appreciate some of the ways that you gather evidence of learning, their participation, showing what they know through gameplay. And don't let me forget too at the end, to dive into Game Up. And it's not just games that are hosted on BrainPop. As Amanda said, there's also lesson plans, tips, tricks, past webinars of ways of bringing game-based learning to your classroom. So great. So hopefully, and again, feel free to share any gaming experience that you have with us and the other attendees. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about implementing games in your classroom. Maybe some strategies that you know of already, but maybe you might pick something up. Um, it's not just having your students. I always had my students, um, you know, they bring their earbuds and they play the game, and the room is silent. They're playing, and really they're just progressing through, and you're hoping that they're applying what they've learned in class. There's different ways that you can bring gaming into your classroom. This is probably a great one right here, where it's the teachers in front, kind of projecting the game, and all your students are watching and kind of chiming in of what should be done next. So I found that doing it this way, one introduces them to a game, you kind of pique their interest. You can also give them a purpose for when you turn them loose to play the game. And what's nice, if you have a BrainPop subscription, you can also assign games now. So you can give them a prompt or a purpose or a question for them to answer and to show as they're playing their game. Another way to use games would be, just the way that I said, as a full with the teacher in the front. But you could also maybe divide the class in half and have it kind of a one side against the other, kind of a rally. Where they're gathering points, once they get to a certain level, collecting points. It could be maybe using a bracket, where they play against each other and work their way up to a championship round. So just kind of starting it off with a little competitive edge there. You can also have them work in groups or pairs. This actually is my favorite way, and I'll tell you in a little bit why. But this, as far as using this arrangement right here, not only are they playing with each other, they are also able to talk above the game. And if you just kind of think back to like when you would play board games as a family or with your friends, not only do you have the gameplay, but then you also have that discussion that's going on around the game, where you're checking your answers. Uh, you have somebody watching you, so there might be a little bit more care in your choices. This is if you have a game, if you're playing games in your classroom in this arrangement here, guarantee it is going to be pretty loud in there. And some teachers, it takes a while to get used to that. But you'll notice though, it's not really conversations that they're having. They're actually having discussions about their gameplay. And if you grew up like me in the 80s with the arcades, I mean, you are able to play your game even though there is all that other noise going around you. You are able to focus on the gameplay. So it's a great learning environment. It's active, lots of discussion, collaboration going on as you're implementing these games. But as I was saying before, I turn it over to Ed to talk a little bit about SnapThought. That was my big thing: is how do you have evidence of learning when you're playing games in the classroom? To me, that was the holy grail. Many years ago, BrainPop came out with this tool. It's a reflective tool called SnapThought. and it's kind of an overlay where students can respond to their gameplay. So rather than really telling you about it, I'm going to turn it over to Ed, and he can kind of tell you a little bit about the SnapThought tool that we have on many of the games on Game Up, and maybe over the overlay with Playmata's game of collisions. So Ed, if you want to go ahead, and I will pass control over to you. And if you want to share your screen and navigate through, we're excited to see.
Happy to do so.
And as you're setting up, I'm just going to remind everybody, if you have questions, feel free to type it in the chat window. He's sharing his screen now. So again, up at the top, you're going to see the little bar where you can reopen the chat window if need be. So Ed, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thanks. So this is collisions, the ionic bonding portion of collisions that is on Game Up, and I'm going to use this to show you how SnapThought works. So SnapThought is, if you have a subscription to BrainPOP, then and your students are logging in individually, they can use SnapThought to take a snapshot of any particular moment in the game and then write a written reflection on that, directly onto that snapshot. So I've entered into level 4, and let's take a look. Let's say that you can, as a teacher, set up a particular prompt that you want your students to take a SnapThought on. So for example, you can ask them, what happens when you attempt to bond two ions that are both positively charged? And so in our game, red ions are positive, blue ions are negative, and I tap them and to activate, and I can hit that button right there for SnapThought, and it will then allow me, there's that snap screenshot that I just took, and then I can hit right here, write my own description. When two positive ions are active, I can type, they will repel. And then that gets sent to you as the teacher, and then you can then reply to that. If you have a comment to it, you can actually respond directly back to the student and whatever it is that they wrote on it. And so this works. We have prompts, some written prompts for you for SnapThought for our particular game for collisions that is on the BrainPOP website. So, or you can come up with your own. But what we've thought it would be a great way to use this is, if you talk about, how do you take a SnapThought on using a +2 ion to make an ionic bond, and what are the ways to successfully use that? So, that could work this way, where I've got to bond a +2 with a -2 and have them kind of come up with that pattern themselves and describe it. And it's also a great way for them to start to integrate vocabulary with the visuals of the game. Because many games, that is what students are drawn to, is purely the visuals and the motion and the feedback from auditory feedback that they are getting directly from the game. So it's a great way for you as a teacher to then see if they can connect what they're seeing in the game with the vocabulary that you've been introducing them to in the classroom and through your lessons. There is direct feedback that our game gives too. So this is another opportunity here where if they do something wrong and they're getting negative feedback here, you can ask them to take a SnapThought of a negative feedback and then explain what was the error that they had made. What I just showed you was actually a correct ionic compound that was being made. But that could be another option too, is have them create a particular one and ask them for additional information about the compound that they just made. For chemistry teachers, that might be, what is the name of that compound that you successfully made in level 4, and to calculate the formula mass of that particular compound. There are lots of different options for you to either ask them to extend beyond the knowledge that's directly provided in the game, or to actually explain the result that they got in the game using SnapThought. And so our game covers several levels, and it gets progressively more challenging. So if you want to have your students, talk really more about different ratios, that's definitely a possibility in some of the higher levels. The idea for us behind collisions was really to give students an opportunity to really think conceptually about these different topics in chemistry. So a lot of times in ionic bonding, for example, we get very caught up in naming conventions. We get caught up in writing out the chemical formulas and kind of miss out on some of the concepts behind what's actually happening in ionic bonding. So for example, what I showed you earlier was what we have often seen when we were playtesting with students was that students didn't necessarily automatically go to bonding a positive with a negative. And so we really thought it was really important to show the repulsion that was happening between ions, also not just the attraction that was possible between a positive and a negative ion. And so that's a quick example of how we found it really important to kind of highlight the concepts of attraction and repulsion as they are playing around in the ionic bonding portion of the game. You'll see it's very, very exploratory too, right? They're not really restricted in any kind of way. And I think another, Amanda was talking earlier about some of the reasons why she enjoys gaming. I think one of the reasons why we really wanted to create collisions for the chemistry classroom is that it was a really free space for students to explore. And it's a safe place for students to make mistakes. And not feel like they were doing something very, very wrong. Gaming is a place where kids feel very, if they lose a life in a traditional game, they're okay with that. And they feel very comfortable learning from that mistake and trying again and really kind of improving their own gameplay abilities in that manner of freely exploring the space. And so we really wanted to take advantage of that nature of gaming in the classroom with collisions. And so hopefully we've been pretty successful at that.
Right, I think can you scroll down? Can you?
I can.
I'm just going to show what it. Do you have all the relate? Right. So for you can also not only are they learning with the game, but there's also related movies. And if you're logged in as a teacher, I'll be sharing with you later on about the lesson ideas and everything else that goes along with the game. So lots of ways that it's not just turning them loose with the game, but you have a lot of support material that comes from here. Again, this is a game that is hosted on BrainPOP, created by Playmata. It's one that you can do, and if you click on the basic info there, you can see that this tells you that it's the time to play. You can invest less than 15 minutes for this. What's nice about this is you have access to many of these science games that are subscription based from other developers, but you have a nice compact sampling of a game that's free for you to try out. I know in my classroom, sometimes the game is enough that's on BrainPOP, but if you want further, you could always subscribe and use the full version. But what's hosted on BrainPOP is quick and easy and relevant to a class period or two. Or there's simulations on there too that can stretch out. So definitely you have quite a variety of games to choose from. Thanks, Ed. Anything else for your introduction there? Because I know that Amanda is going to actually go in. Amanda has used this in her high school classroom, and she's got some great insight as a teacher to share, not only with implementation, but also with the trials and tribulations for using games in classrooms. So Amanda, we'll go ahead and let you advance the slides as you will as the presenter.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So Yes, I have used this game, and I've used it in two different ways. It was very useful for both ways. The first way I used it was a traditional looking at the kids and seeing how they could best explain the phenomena to me. I give them the lesson, I give them the information, and then I let them go at it and see if they can come up with the reasoning why. So if we look here, you can see that the students are able to then give me feedback on why it is pairing up, why there are 2 rings associated with calcium and 2 rings associated with oxygen, and how that ionic bond is working and the ratio to it. So they had to delve deeper into this as the explanation as to why. In fact, I believe there is one that goes into further information. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it here. Excuse me for flicking through. You can see that there's some that actually go in much greater detail. Here it is. You can see it goes into much greater detail talking about why the ion is formed the way it is. We're talking and getting them to delve even deeper and pulling in different words, different terminologies, and really getting them to get the grips as to why this formula is made the way it is. And as such, it worked out brilliantly. It gave me insight into, my goodness, these kids really understood what they were talking about. And in other cases, okay, well, now I know that I really need to repeat this information on tomorrow's lesson. Games can be assigned as homework, which is fantastic. You tell the kids in your class, okay, so for homework tonight, I want you to go home and play a game. They look at you like you've got 3 heads, and they all get really excited. And it's a wonderful thing. You can make their day as well at the same time as making your life really easy, because with these SnapThoughts, you can really get an understanding as to, are they really grasping these concepts or not? And again, this allows the children to really have trial and error, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to figure out, okay, well, what happens if I do put 2 things together that don't happen? Well, what would happen at this point? It allows them to explore without their peers watching them, and so they can actually figure out questions that they may have without the fear of raising your hand and sounding silly. There's a lot of students that fear the hand raising and asking a question because they're judged by others, and this way they're allowed to trial and error. It's okay to fail, and I think there's many a time that students don't feel it is okay to fail, but here in a game it is. The second time that I used this was I was trying to evaluate a student. She came to me a little while ago and said, I would like to move up a level into the honours class, and just to see if she was available to move up. And I gave her the concept of ionic bonding. And I said, okay, now play this game and make your SnapThoughts. And from that, I can determine whether or not you're grasping the concept or not. The student was able to grasp the concept, but her answers in SnapThought were less than the honours level. So it gave me evidence to explain to her that, great, I'm so glad that you're getting these concepts in quickly, but based upon what you're giving me, there is, you need just a little bit extra work. Get the A in my class rather than struggling and getting a C in a higher level class. And she was good with that, because she could then see, based upon her information, that her positioning in my class was correct. This collision ionic bonding is an excellent way to get the students to see how ions do bond together. And in the end, and it's also really easy, you can see here as I'm clicking through the slides that it's very user-friendly. There's just one click and it tells you how to do it, rather than getting worried about, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? It tells you. And what's a really nice thing is afterwards it shows you how, as an ionic solid, they get put together, and it helps you to realize size difference of the atoms and in ionic form. So the students actually go, oh wow, that really does fit together, that makes sense, and it gives them another visual, which I thought was excellent. Speaking of games in general, this one here was an excellent game, but I have enjoyed playing some other games with my students as well. There is a lot out there through BrainPOP that there's fantastic resources. In the beginning, I wanted to try BrainPOP out, and I muddled through it until I actually went through a webinar, and I went through some training at FETC, and then it was like the light bulb switched on, and I was able to actually understand and utilize and realize how many resources there were available for me. It just made life so much different and easier. It was great. From there, I was able to utilize different games for different topics. One of the ones that we did in my biology class was we played Sortify, which is a game that the students had to sort animals into different characteristics or different groupings. It allowed us to review concepts, and it allowed us to explore new concepts, again with the availability for my students to fail, and that was okay. A snapshot was again, or SnapThoughts, I beg your pardon, was available again, and they had to justify why they put the different creatures into their different buckets. It got incredibly loud in my classroom, filled with squeals of enjoyment and, oh my goodness, I've got more points than you, and it allowed them to push each other on, which was a wonderful thing. But the noisiest day, and it was good noise, it wasn't one of those cacophonies, it was just fantastic that these students were so engaged, so excited, was during the meaning of beep. They were able to group up together and go into a game with 4 players, and they were, okay, I'm going to play you now, I'm going to play you now. So they got into a grouping setting and they competed against one another. The level of squeals and excitement and, oh, I've got more points than you, oh, that word was great, and encouragement to one another. It was just fantastic to see, because not only were the kids that usually are talkative and engaged in the class engaged, but the ones that are typically quiet, they just came out their shells. They found a medium in which that they could almost find anonymity, or gave them a sense of comfort because they're used to playing games, and it allowed them to really come out of their shell, as I said, become engaged, become active, and they were some of the stronger ones in the game, which was fantastic to see. So it allowed everybody in the room a chance to shine, which was lovely. As I said, you can actually play these games in the classroom, or you can assign them for homework. And with the homework, it's not just, okay, go play and then come back and tell me what you thought. You can actually give them assessments with it. And again, they don't realize they're getting assessed. They don't realize they're learning and reinforcing their information as they're doing it. One of the other things that I really like is how cross-curricular it is. With, for example, the meaning of beep, it allows them to really think in English. It allows them to really think in terms of synonyms, as well as applying it in a scientific way. Absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited about a new game that I haven't tried yet, but I'm going to, which is the Time Zone X. We do a whole module on the atomic timeline, and to be able to have the kids work it out through Time Zone X and seeing how they understand how events fit into the grand scheme of things in life, it really is an awesome thing. And again, I'm really excited about playing this game with them. So games can be utilized multiple times, multiple ways throughout the day, throughout your different lessons. And again, BrainPOP has made it so easy that all I need to do is just click on a lesson, click on an idea, and they have all those extra resources available for you. It just makes life incredibly easy. I was, as I said, very anti-games, but now I don't know how I've managed without it prior. It's a fantastic way of getting the kids engaged.
Perfect. All right. And I think, too, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Amanda, that yes, it's not just playing a singular game. If you're introducing this or partnering up with other teachers and units, you are able to cherry pick. Not only, I want you to play this game, but I also want you to watch this movie on the atomic models, different theories. You can do all that in the new assignment builders. So that's kind of nice, where you're able to make it more than just a game, or even to give your students options. Some students respond great to games. Others may have another way that they want to show what they know. So there's quite a variety of ways to express on every single topic there. So
it's also quite useful to use the games as an introduction into a new topic as well. I found that it gives them a tool to make the new topic less scary. Oh, great, we're playing a game. Oh, I don't know this. And it highlights the areas that they don't know. And then at the end, if they play it again, they're like, oh, yeah, now I get it. Now I understand. And it allows them a nice, easy transition into the new topic, or even just into the day. It's fantastic.
Perfect. Yeah. And this game right here, it's beautiful with like what Sarah was saying. With you're talking, you can talk about math with ratios, but and I'm not a chemistry teacher by far, but just looking at some of the screenshots, there's geometry. There's a lot of different ways that a creative teacher can use the game beyond just gameplay. Okay, so Amanda, I'm gonna thank you for sharing. And again, if you have anything you want to pipe in, as I'm going to go ahead and show everybody what we were talking about, the Game Up platform. So let's go ahead and let me get in here and share my screen. So you should be able to see my screen. And again, if you have questions or anything, you can put those in the chat window. I'll see if I can kind of keep an eye on that. Or Sarah, if you want to, or Amanda, if you want to, if there's something that I'm missing, as I'm sharing, just kind of pipe in and I can go back to that. So looking at my screen here, let's just go in, since we're talking middle school and high school science. You can find everything you need right here, going through the different units, but then you also have topics. So every single one of these is a 3 to 5 minute movie on a specific topic. So let's just go into let's go into let's go to collisions, to the actual game. So if there's a game that you want, you can go this way, or if you're on atoms, maybe that might pop up a game as well. But just to kind of go back to what I said earlier, this is the game that is played. It's hosted right here on Game Up, but you can see down here below that if you're teaching with this game, you have all this information. So on every single game that's on BrainPOP, you can go here to the lesson ideas, also your standards. You can see also anything that students can do. They can also be assigned. Any game that you see that may have this little camera icon right there, that means that it has snapshot or SnapThought enabled on it as well. So let's go back up. Okay, I'm going to go back to the home page and bring you to Game Up. The easiest way to get there is if you scroll down to the bottom of the home page, you'll see right next to BrainPOP Educators is going to be a link that goes to Game Up. So clicking on that brings you to every single game that is hosted on BrainPOP. So from here, it starts off with we have a feature going on about science systems. So there's always, maybe a back to school, maybe a coding. Here we have science systems. Maybe civic games are going to be a feature. But you can also find your games by subject. And then you also have a way to go by collection. So you'll see that we have some coding games here. Here's all the games that are with SnapThought. Look, 127 games have SnapThought, a way that your students can give feedback on their gameplay, as well as other specific, simulations and interactives, um, and other science systems games that you may have. So that's an easy way to find the games. You can also, let's just go in and to science. This brings up the game finder. So the game finder, these are all of our science games that we have, but you can get specific. You can go by subject area. Middle school, high school, you can toggle where it's going to be. Those games are specifically for your grade level, and then also the time to play. So lots of ways for you to go in and explore to find the games that you want. Again, all these games are free, whether you're a subscriber or not. If your school subscribes to BrainPOP, you will have the reflective tool of SnapThought, and the ability to assign those games. But if not, your students can play, and this is something that you can discuss with them in class. So that's a quick and easy way to get to games. I hope that you picked up a little bit with how it can be used in a middle school and a high school classroom. And let me just kind of share a little bit with you about some, since teachers love data and numbers. Let's go in here to a little bit about summing up Game Up. It's been on BrainPOP for 7 years at least, and maybe you did not see it. Whenever you go to a specific game, you'll see maybe a game button on the matrix there. Not just the movie, but you'll also have all those other tools and features that go with each one. Over 150 games are on that Game Up that I just showed you, linking to over 600 topics. And that last fact right there from last year's school year, all the playing the games across the world ended up in the one school year we had the cumulative amount of 193 years of gameplay. So that's pretty impressive. All the games and all the support materials are on BrainPOP's BrainPOP Educators. Let me share that with you where that is. So anything about games, your lesson plans, when you click on the lesson plans for each of the games, it's going to bring you to BrainPOP Educators. But you can go right here to BrainPOP Educators, and you'll see there's different ways of somebody asked the question about individual accounts. That's going to be a way that you can go right in here and set up individual accounts on your tool and feature support. But you'll also see down below here, we also have support for gameplay. So when you click on that, here you have different resources, maybe screencasts, other directives on how to use and implement game-based learning within your classroom. So make sure that you check out BrainPOP Educators as well for your go-to for instructions. All right. So if you have any other questions, I'll stick around for a little bit longer. Amanda and Ed and Sarah may stick around too. But if you have any specific questions that were brought up or came up during the game webinar here, just add those into the chat windows. Speaking of games, we give you an opportunity to play games as one of the assignments. We kind of Amanda is one of our certified BrainPOP educators. You too can go through the program. On BrainPOP Educators, you'll find a link where you can sign up. We have a free online class where you will learn, just everything that BrainPOP has to offer and then some that you can implement within your classroom. So hopefully you are interested in that. Here's some contact information to wrap up. You can reach me at robertm@brainpop.com. Or follow me on Twitter. Amanda's got her information there. If you have anything for Sarah and Ed from Playmata, feel free to loop that through me, and I'll make sure to get some answers there as well. But yeah, if we can offer any other assistance in your gaming or implementation or maybe resources that you can't find, just reach out to us and we'll be glad to help. So thank you for attending. Again, this webinar has been recorded. We'll have the archive copy posted in a couple days. But if you have any other questions, feel free to pipe them in. But I'd like to thank Amanda. Thank you for hosting another webinar with me.
My
And
pleasure. Thank you.
yes, and Ed and Sarah from Playmata. Thank you for sharing a great game that's added to BrainPOP's Game Up. I hope that other teachers will find just as much use as Amanda did. So without any other questions, I'm going to just kind of mute myself and just kind of go through the scroll of the chat and answer any questions that are in there already or any that come in with the next few minutes. But again, thank you very much, and we hope to see you on another webinar, one of our Wednesday webinars from BrainPOP. Thank you.